take off my glasses because I'm old. The concrete was rough and hard and already cold, even though the sun wouldn't settle down and fire-streak the darkening sky for another hour. The boy knew it was late in the day because his father had just pulled up in front of the house in a big, new, black automobile. It wasn't really new. It was used. But it was his father's, and so it was new to them, although it wasn't shiny. A few days ago, that car had belonged to someone else, but now his father was a professional. A teacher, his mother told him. But the boy already knew something had changed because his father no longer wore that dark gray uniform, no longer came home dragging like an old dog, soaking wet with sweat, dirty and tired, so damn tired. His father didn't pull up in front of their little house in a big white truck with a sign on each side, Crystal Ice, painted in crisp blue and white letters above a large, transparent block of ice, powerfully pinched by sharp iron tongs attached to sturdy wooden handles. Now the boy's father came home dressed in a white shirt with pencil marks and chalk dust on his cuffs, wearing a nubbly burnt orange tie that also had chalk on it, wearing dark wool trousers and shiny brown shoes that weren't as shiny as they were when the boy's father left the house in the morning. The boy knew those shoes. For a nickel, he would shine those shoes, and though the nickel was nice, he could buy an ice cream cone or a bottle of Coke or a chocolate bar with that nickel. But the real reason he shined those shoes was to see his father smile, to see his father's face light up for a moment, to feel his father's fingers scruff through his hair, to hear his father say, "Pretty good job," before his father brushed the top of the boy's head with his lips, stood up and kissed the boy's mother firmly on her lips, and waved goodbye, disappearing for the rest of the day. When his dad disappeared, his mother would take the boy and herself a little breakfast and clean house, which didn't take long. The house was small and worn out. There wasn't a lot of benefit in getting it too clean. Clean enough was good enough, and when it was done, there wasn't much for a boy and his mother to do, so they would talk. Not that the boy did much talking. Mostly he just listened as the mom talked to herself about all the things she would do someday with her little family when there was money, when they weren't living in a worn-out old house, in a worn-out old part of town where there was nothing for a pretty young mother or a handsome young son to do. She was young and pretty. Most moms are pretty, really, still children themselves when that first child is not yet 3 years old. But she was younger, prettier than most, with long blonde hair that flowed down her back, and a cheery, smiling face, bright and eager, barely 20 years old. Shiny gray-green sparkling were her eyes, and after she cleaned up the breakfast dishes and straightened up their tiny little house, she'd put on bright red lipstick and try to figure out what to do next. She didn't drive. She didn't know anyone, and there was nowhere to go anyway. Dad did all the driving, and they only had one car, which he needed. Don't you know cars are expensive? Money doesn't grow on trees, and she couldn't drive anyway. Driving was a man's job, and the dad didn't see any reason for the mom to know how to do the dad's job. She didn't need to do anything more than just take care of him and their son. That's all. She was the mom. He was the dad. That was the end of it. And there wasn't any reason she needed more friends either. The neighbors they had in that part of town, the part of town they could afford, weren't the kind of people he wanted her to have as friends. They were too old, too poor, too different, or too much men. Once in a while, he invited someone over, someone from work, but not too often. She had their little family. Who needs more than that? So when the milkman delivered the milk, she made him a cup of coffee. When the postman delivered the mail, he got one too. One day there was a fire in a house down the street. After putting on her makeup and the only attractive clothes she still had from when she was in high school before she had a baby, clothes which flattered her still young figure, she walked down the street with her young son in her arms to see what there was to see. The firemen saw what there was to see, and almost immediately the boy and the mom were perched atop the hood of a great big bright red fire truck. Together they watched the firemen do fireman stuff, involving fire and flames and water and smoke, dangerous things, heroic things, manly things. frankly boring things. I see what you're doing, said the father when he heard about the fire. What am I doing? Asked the mother, nearly in tears. You know what you're doing, said the father. I know about the milkman. I know about the postman. I know what goes on. I delivered ice. Nothing goes on, said the mother. Do you think I started that fire? What do you think I am? Asked the mother, standing in the kitchen, her face as red as her lipstick, tears flowing from her eyes freely. From across the room, the child watched them nervously. You know what I think, said the father.
Whoa.